Hello, and welcome to you all. Can everybody see me? My name's Sarah Andre, and I'm the Development Associate with the Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters. On behalf of the entire Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters team, thank you for joining us tonight for this, the 8th annual Stars Over Katahdin. This is just the second Stars Over Katahdin since Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monuments designation in 2020 as an international dark sky sanctuary. It is also our second time around with a virtual presentation. We're really honored and so excited that you are all here with us to celebrate the beautiful dark skies above the monument and learn why dark skies matter. We are grateful to co-presenting organization Dark Sky Maine for their partnership and looking forward to a fun, educational, and inspirational program. When the team started planning the 8th Stars Over Katahdin earlier this year, we were working on a typical in-person event in the Katahdin region. Well, we're back on Zoom. Sad that we can't be together looking at the skies above the National Monument, but so very happy to be bringing them to you at home. Our program kicks off this evening with a welcome from Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters, that's us, followed by 5 10-minute segments from our wonderfully talented presenters. Please note that there will be no question and answer during the program. Please enter your questions at any time in the Q&A, and we will get to as many as we can after everyone has presented. Tonight's program is being recorded, and we hope to share it with you and anyone who couldn't tune in tonight. Keep an eye out for the follow-up email with that and other links and resources in about 1 week from now. Finally, before I step aside, I'd also like to extend our thanks to the sponsors of tonight's program, Richardson's Hardware and Celestron, as well as our partners in this presentation, Dark Sky Maine. We'd also like to thank the members, supporters, and volunteers who work with Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters to make this kind of event possible. And now, I'd like to introduce Andrew Bossy, Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters Executive Director, to say a few words. Go for it, Andy.
Well, thanks, Sarah, and welcome everyone. We appreciate you being with us as we celebrate this incredible wonder that is our night skies in this special place, known for what it doesn't have, light pollution. I am the Executive Director at Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters. It's an honor and pleasure to serve in that role. Our organization was founded on the belief that this special place, today known as Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, in the community of people connected to it, can change lives and craft a better tomorrow for all of us and future generations that follow us. We are the official nonprofit park partner to the National Park Service here at the National Monument. We work to leverage time, talent, and treasure to lift up this special place and the aspirations of people connected to it. And we do that by providing a margin of excellence beyond what the Park Service can do on its own. Our community supports visitation to the monument and throughout the region through materials and events just like the one we're having tonight. We bolster facilities within the monument and connected to the National Monument, like the new tent sites we opened up at Lunksoos this summer. And we're empowering our youngest generation through youth education and workforce development programming. This work is made possible thanks to a diverse and growing community of members that believe in the power of philanthropy. As Sarah just mentioned, we thank you if you're already a member of Friends for your support. And if you're new to us, we hope you'll consider learning more about what we do and consider joining yourself as a member. As Sarah mentioned, at the beginning of the pandemic, we heralded a bright spot in a dark moment. Only a few weeks after we started working remotely, masking up and social distancing, years of work finally came to fruition when the International Dark Sky Association designated Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument as an international dark sky sanctuary. With this designation comes recognition of an incredible resource that's increasingly rare in our world and the responsibility to ensure that these skies remain dark. Only 13 other locations across the globe can claim this prestigious designation, and this sanctuary is the only one on the East Coast, east of the Mississippi River in the continent of North America. A number of people on this program tonight you'll be hearing from, along with many others, played critical roles leading up to this awesome and designation. They organized prior versions of this event, supported the application process, performed very late night light readings, and held countless conversations of building support and recognition. You individually and collectively have demonstrated the power of our community to spread joy and the necessary commitment to protect our night skies. Thank you for your stellar passion, astronomical hard work, and out of this world perseverance. We, of course, are gathered virtually again, as Sarah mentioned. However, I am speaking to you tonight from what is known as present-day Mount Chase, Maine. This place is the traditional territory of the Penobscot Nation, and the landscape that our friends group supports, the place where the waterways of the Wasatacook, Saboas, and the East Branch of the Penobscot River run, is presently known to many of us as Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. It, too, is the traditional territory of Penobscot Nation and sacred lands to all Wabanaki nations, including the Aroostook Band of Micmac, the Holton Band of Maliseet Indian, Passamaquoddy at Sabayak, Passamaquoddy at Madocmicook, Penobscot Nation, and Wolastoqiyik and Mi'kmaq of the Canadian Maritimes. When we acknowledge the nations that live in relationship to these lands, we here at Friends are committing ourselves to necessary reflection about the ongoing legacy of colonialism in institutions like our own. We are committing ourselves to learning the truth of this legacy and unlearning harmful narratives so that we may live in respectful relationship today. We are striving to be in authentic collaboration with Wabanaki people. Our New Moon teaching series taking place as a webinar on each new moon is part of that commitment to centering Wabanaki people and sharing about their own knowledge that is distinct to each of the cultures of the nations. That series is an early expression of these commitments, and we're looking at how all aspects of our program can contribute to the ongoing legacy of colonialism, here in Wabanaki territory. We did get an advanced question this evening about Wabanaki stories about the night skies being shared. We were so fortunate to have John Dennis join us last year for this program, and having many Wabanaki people share their own stories as part of our New Moon teachings. However, the lineup for this evening does not include a Wabanaki person, and so we will not be sharing their stories as a result. As we seek to build this community, we're working to have our actions live up to the words I just spoke of. You may have heard me say these things before if you've tuned into webinars. To follow through on these important commitments and to build an ever-expanding community requires that we dedicate ourselves to not only learning, but applying that learning for a more inclusive, better, and brighter tomorrow for all of us. Maybe I should be saying darker tomorrow, but you get what I'm saying. So now it gives me great pleasure to introduce another member of our Friends team, our education director, place-based educator extraordinaire, and fellow community builder and member, Kayla Rush. Thank you, Kayla, for all you do. Please take it away.
Thanks, Andy. So it is exciting to be together, even though it's virtual. We would usually be gathering together in the monument right now, exploring, sharing, learning. School groups would be arriving, and volunteers and attendees would be chatting with staff about the evening presentations. And it warms my heart to think of those memories. And though we're not together in person tonight, we're lucky to be able to continue learning and sharing in different ways. And, first, we're excited to announce the donation of a telescope to the Katahdin Gear Library, thanks to a generous donation from Celestron. And second, we're thrilled to continue working with schools outside, and especially thankful for a partnership with Northern Stars Planetarium and their exciting programming. It's been great to see students and teachers continue their relationship with the night sky through this programming. And on that note, I would like to introduce John Meader, owner and educator at Northern Stars Planetarium and secretary of Dark Sky Maine. If you would like to learn more about this phenomenal programming that I don't have enough time to tell you about, You can go to John Meader's website. It is going to be in the chat, and it is northernstars.planetarium.com. John is now going to provide a tour of the October sky above Katahdin Woods and Waters, so I'm going to hand it over to him. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Kayla. Hey, I'm so proud to be here with all these fine people and all of you, and I'd like to share with you a few of the things you might see if you stepped outside your house tonight after our presentation. So let me bring up the sky here. And this sky we're looking at is what you would see outside your house, perhaps tonight, around 8 o'clock after our presentation's over. So I hope some of you have clear skies and can get outside and take a look. I always like to start with what's going to grab your attention first, and what will do that this evening is going to be the moon. If you look to the south tonight, you're going to see a waxing gibbous moon, almost due south at 8 o'clock. Waxing means it's getting bigger each night, and gibbous means it's a little more than half. It looks like a little more than half, kind of egg shape, and you can see that there. But what's really exciting tonight, which is only going to happen tonight, is you notice that just above the moon to the left is a bright star, and to the right is another fairly bright star. Well, those two objects aren't stars at all, they're two planets. So the brighter one is Jupiter, and the fainter one is Saturn. Now, if you go out tomorrow night, Jupiter and Saturn will still be there, but the moon will be over here. The moon moves basically 13 degrees across the sky every day. So it'll be 13 degrees to the east tomorrow. But tonight they make a nice little triangle. If you happen to have a pair of binoculars, you might want to check out Jupiter first and zoom in on Jupiter with your binoculars. Binoculars are just two little telescopes strapped together, and they're great for looking at the sky. The first number, if it's a 7 by 50, 7 means it magnifies 7 times. So what you might find with Jupiter is you'll see the planet, but you'll see tonight, you'll see 3 of the 4 large moons. You'll see 2 here on the left and 1 on the right. There are 4 large ones which you frequently see. Tonight, 1 probably is behind the planet. They look a little bigger here than they'll look in your binoculars. The program I'm using makes them a little bigger so they stand out clearly because they're really a lot smaller than Jupiter. If you have a telescope, you can zoom in closer and you might see some bands going across Jupiter as well, though you won't see the colors you're seeing here. That only comes pretty much with photography. But it's wonderful to look at. Jupiter is the largest planet, over 1,000 times larger than the Earth. Then, before you go too far, you want to take your pair of binoculars, or better yet, a telescope, and look at Saturn. To be honest with you, binoculars, you won't see Saturn's famous rings. At best, it might look like it's kind of an oval disk. But if you have a small telescope that can magnify up to about 50 times, you can start to see those marvelous rings going around that planet. Those rings are made of ice, mostly water ice, believe it or not. So if you took a chunk of Saturn's rings and melted it, you could drink it. I don't know if I'd really do that. There might be some impurities in there too, who knows? But it is made mostly of water. They're thousands of miles wide, but less than 100 yards thick. Imagine that. If you could tip Saturn sideways and set the rings down, they would fit between the goalposts on a football field and extend thousands of miles up in the sky. Well, those 2 planets are in the sky tonight, right beside the moon, and they're definitely worth taking a look at. I'm going to take a look at the moon too, but I'm going to save it to the end. The moon is so bright that it kind of wipes out your dark adaptation to your eyes. So you always should save it to be the last thing you look at when you go observing. So now that we've noticed Jupiter and Saturn and we've taken note of the moon, I'm going to ask you to turn your back on them and move your gaze to the northwest. In the northwestern sky tonight, you're going to see a constellation which most people might be familiar with, the Big Dipper. The Big Dipper has 3 stars right here for a curved handle, and then 4 stars for the pot or the bowl. To me, it looks like a pot you'd cook with on the stove. You know, put some mac and cheese in there and you got your lunch cooking. Now I can put some lines up there like this, but you notice when the program does that, it adds a few more lines. That's because the Big Dipper is actually part of a larger constellation known as the Great Bear. And with the point out here being his nose and some legs coming down, takes a little bit of imagination to turn that dipper into a bear, considering bears don't really have long tails, yet the one in the sky always seems to. Well, that's the Big Dipper or the Great Bear. Now, once you find the Big Dipper, the next thing most people want to find is the Little Dipper, and that's a little bit harder. Draw a line up through the back 2 stars of the Dipper's pot. They're called the pointer stars, and they'll point you to the North Star, Polaris. Famous not because it's bright, but because it's right above the North Pole. And it marks the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. The handle bends like this, And this square is the pot or the bowl. We can light it up with lines so you can see it a little better. Now, I want to point out that if you look at the stars here, this sky is set for what you might find in rural Maine, not Katahdin woods and waters. This would be like 20 miles outside of Portland somewhere, go off towards Buxton or someplace like that, or outside of Bangor. Get outside of Bangor or Augusta or Waterville, the skies would look about like this. And that little dipper can be challenging to see because those stars are so faint. You'll see the North Star and Kochab, but the other ones are kind of faint. But if you're lucky enough to go someplace away from the lights, I mean, really away from the lights, like Katahdin Woods and Waters, one of our favorite spots, obviously, then the sky might look a little more like this. A few more stars to be seen, aren't there? That's why we get so excited. Look at the stars we suddenly have here. You get away from all that light pollution, and there are a lot more stars. The Little Dipper does show up a little bit better now, though some people say when you have that many stars in the sky, the constellations get challenging just in a different way. Well, once you find the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper, go from the Big Dipper past Polaris, and you're going to come to a W-shaped group of stars right here called Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia was the queen. Most people agree W's don't look too much like queens. Sometimes it's imagined as her throne and she's sitting there. I tend to think it looks like a crown she might wear. Well, a lot of people say it looks like a W to me. But what I want you to notice, though, let's turn the lines off for a second, is behind that W, there's a cloudy looking area. See that bluish cloud right through here? And if you follow it, it goes all the way across the sky. That's the Milky Way, which is our galaxy. We live inside the Milky Way. And actually, all the stars you see outside at night are part of the Milky Way, too. It's just when you look towards this band, you're looking into the center of the galaxy, into the thickness of it. Looking down here, you're looking kind of out the bottom, and looking up above, you're looking kind of out the top. Everything you can see with just your eyes is part of the Milky Way, except for one spot. Right underneath Cassiopeia, remember Cassiopeia up here, the W, let's light her back up. Right underneath there, if you're in a nice dark spot, you can see a very faint fuzzy star. You can just barely make it out right there. Well, that faint fuzzy star is not a star at all. That's another galaxy called Andromeda. So this is the Andromeda galaxy, and it's the most distant point of light you can see with your eyes. It looks like a faint fuzzy star. With your binoculars, it's going to look kind of like this. Looks like someone tried to erase something with a really bad eraser and kind of smudged it all out. But what's cool is if you had a camera on a small telescope, or you had a bigger telescope that could gather more light, then the Andromeda galaxy looks more like this. That's pretty spectacular. All that information is there, but it's so faint that your eyes can't really see it all. But a camera can gather light over time and bring out the detail and increase the resolution. And a large telescope has a big mirror or a big lens that can gather lots of light and bring that resolution in, so we see all that fine detail and brighten it right up. It's pretty spectacular. Now, if you could go outside the Milky Way, if you could go to Andromeda and stand on a planet there and look back at our Milky Way, it would look much like Andromeda does to us, just a smudge in the sky. Well, follow our Milky Way across the sky from the northeast all the way over to the southwest. Let's go all the way down. When you get down here, you notice there's some dark regions in the Milky Way. Those are dust clouds obscuring the light from billions and billions of stars. There are hundreds of billions of stars in the Milky Way, and the very heart of the Milky Way is right down here near the horizon for us right now. Well, that brings us right back to the southern sky with Jupiter and Saturn and the moon. And I want to finish up with the moon because the moon's always fun to look at. And if you have a pair of binoculars, you want to check it out, magnify it up a little bit, and you can see some pretty interesting features. You can see these big dark spots with just your eyes. They're called the Maria. They're not craters. They're giant ancient lava flows from volcanic eruptions that occurred long ago. The best place to see craters is along the line between daytime and nighttime. That's called the terminator line, where light terminates. So if you were standing right there, you'd be watching the sunrise on the moon. And at sunrise and sunset, you have long shadows. And those shadows bring out contrast and detail. So you can see all these circles. They're all craters. They're made when the moon, millions of years ago, was hit by boulders and rocks and asteroids. And I want to point out one to finish up with. This one right down here at the bottom. And we're going to zoom in like we have a telescope and look at that one. This one right here. That's a crater named Taiko. Taiko is 53 miles in diameter. That's a pretty big hole in the ground. It's 15,000 feet deep. That's a really big hole in the ground. This is a very young crater, only 108 million years old. Doesn't sound very young, does it? Some of those others are hundreds and hundreds of millions of years old. This is a young one. Well, what's kind of interesting, though, if you look at it even closer, you see the dot in the center of Taiko right there? That's a rebound mountain. When the rock hit, that made this giant hole, stuff went flying everywhere. A ring went out from the pressure that made the rim of the crater, but stuff bounced right, it got pushed down in the center and it bounced right straight back up into the sky, then fell back down, making a mountain in the middle. The interesting thing I want you to consider is that that mountain in the center of Taiko is 5,200 feet tall. That's almost the exact same height as Mount Katahdin. That's the height of Mount Katahdin. And it's about the same size as Mount Katahdin. So if you were on the moon and looked at Mount Katahdin through a telescope, it'd look about like that right there. And consider the fact that this crater is 53 miles in diameter. All of Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument and all of Baxter State Park could fit inside that crater. I'll leave you on that note. Thank you very much for exploring the skies of October with me, and I hope you get outside and take a look at them yourself tonight afterwards. Thank you. Back to you, Sarah. Oh, I got to give back the screen.
Thank you, John. That was awesome. And I can't wait to get outside and look at the stars and the moon now. Our next presenter is Serena Sanborn, Education and Outreach Manager with Waterville Creates and a Maine Master Naturalist. And she will be presenting about creatures of the dark. Go for it, Serena.
Yay. All right, thank you. Let's share my screen here and get this started as a slideshow for you. Okay, so how's that look? Okay. Great. Okay, so first of all, 10 minutes. I could talk just like 3 hours just about bats, so I'm going to do my best to be really succinct. So I'm going to talk a bit about nocturnal animals of the North Woods. So there are lots of animals adapted to be nocturnal. So between 65 and 70% of all land animals are actually adapted to be nocturnal. And why is that? So being nocturnal has some great advantages. So first of all, there's a lot of protection provided by nighttime. There's more available prey in the case of being a predator. And then the other thing is that nighttime provides some advantages. It has an ecological niche for many species. It's often cooler, it's more humid, which is beneficial. If you're an amphibian, you need that kind of protection of that cooler and moisture air. So why be nocturnal? There's lots and lots of reasons. One other reason is that humans aren't awake then. So we are diurnal animals. So there's 3 patterns of sleep: diurnal, nocturnal, crepuscular. Diurnal is awake during the day, nocturnal awake at night, and crepuscular, which is one of my favorite words, is awake at dawn and dusk. There's a lot of evidence, in fact, that some animals that were diurnal became nocturnal when humans came on the scene. So let's go to our next. So if you are nocturnally adapted, electric lights just will harm you as you make your way for life. Lights just interfere with mating, finding food, staying safe, period. And this is one of my favorite memes. Not sure you guys thought you would see a meme today, but there's some off. 190 million years of evolution versus one bright boy. Really, really confusing when you're a moth that all of a sudden these electric lights are there. So electric lights interfere with a whole lot of things in animals' lives. So let's talk a bit about owls. I do want to I'm going to highlight bats and owls kind of due to our season right now. So owls are uniquely adapted apex predators. They are super important in our forests because they are primary predators of rodents. And if you look at this owl, so this is a northern saw-whet owl, which some of you in the North Woods may have even heard before. They make a little sound that's like toot, 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 toot in the forest. And it sounds like a truck backing up a little bit. I've heard that from kids. But it's our smallest owl here in Maine. But check out this owl. Even a 3-year-old knows what an owl is because of that flat, amazing face and those huge eyes. So those eyes are uniquely adapted to be nocturnal. In fact, a lot of owls, when there's streetlights or headlights, will be blinded. They just cannot see when there's that much light. They avoid street lights, they avoid lights. Check out how these feathers are arranged around the face. So those feathers not only collect sound, but collect light. So that flat, incredible face, those huge eyes, they are just amazing nocturnal predators. Underneath these feathers are their ears. Most owls' ears are crooked. One's up high and one's down low. This is really for triangulation. So if there's a mouse over here, the sound of the mouse hits one ear at a different time it hits the other ear. That tells the owl where to go and to find the mouse. If you notice on this bird, you'll even see these incredible soft feathers. That's another adaptation for being awake at night. So having silent flight allows you to not only sneak up on prey, but to hear better. So if there is an owl flying overhead, some of you have had this experience, you will not hear them. They are completely silent. I'm not going to talk too much about swiveling their heads, but I do want to mention they have zygodactyl feet, which is kind of cool. A lot of birds have arrangements of 3 toes in the front and 1 in the back. Owls have 2 and 2, and this is pretty unusual. There's some other birds like parrots have this and woodpeckers have this because of how they move, but zygodactyl feet in the case of owls are for climbing and for grabbing prey. So owls evolved about 60 million years ago. Okay. Oops. For some reason my cursor disappeared. There we go. Here's our most common northern owls in Maine. Really, our most common is the barred owl. Many of you have probably heard it in the northern woods. We'll talk about that. Great horns are pretty common, saw-whet, and a little less likely short-eared, long-eared owls. Snowies, mostly only in winter. Here's our most common owl, and again, this is the owl that says, "Cuckoo's for you." So many of you have heard this sound. The females and males tend to talk together back and forth. And notice again with this beautiful barred owl, you can actually see how soft those feathers are just by looking. And that great disc-like face. Now these black, dark black eyes that they have are also nocturnally adapted. So you'll see that the darker eyed owls often really need dark skies for them to hunt. They mate for life. They also stay within a 5-mile radius, which is kind of amazing for a bird. They're very attached to a home range, and the pair tends to stay in that one area their entire life. So if you hear a barred owl in your yard or in your forest near you, that pair, if you locate where they love to nest, they're going to be there for a long time. The other thing is they love mature forests because they're cavity nesters. They don't make their own nests. They just choose an old tree to nest in. This is the great horned owl. One really great fact about them is they are the primary predator of the skunk. And what do you want to not have if you hunt skunk? A sense of smell. So they cannot smell. They don't have a sense of smell. That's actually a lot of birds. Don't have great senses of smell. Notice those great ear tufts. They're not ears, but we think they're probably camouflage. For camouflage, they help them basically disappear against tree bark. And then let's talk about bats. One of my very favorite subjects is bats. I could probably go on about bats forever, but here's just a couple highlights. So if you had ears like a bat, like many bats, what would happen is, like, you could stretch your arms over your head. That's how big your ears would be. Imagine having ears 2 times the size of your head or bigger. In the case of some bats, their ears are even bigger than that. Those are uniquely adapted for being awake at night and using your ears to find your way around. They are not blind. They do have eyesight, but really those ears are incredible. Another remarkable thing about bats is they're highly social. So, okay, I'm just checking my timing. They're highly social. They are one of the animals that we have found that forms friendships outside of family units. So this is a pretty interesting discovery. They also have pretty advanced language. We don't understand all of it, though there's a really interesting study that came out just a couple of years ago, some of you might have heard. And they really think what's happening most of the time is bats are arguing with each other. So, which is amazing. I mean, imagine you were like in a sleepover with 500 friends. You might get like a little bit nudgy with your elbows. That's basically the bats are like, move over. This is my spot and my babies are here. We think that's actually what they're talking about, which is, I love that fact. This is just an aside. What are you more likely to die of than rabies from a bat, a vending machine falling on you, getting hit on the head by a coconut, lightning, or falling in your bathroom? One person in the US and Canada dies a year from bats. So people are freaked out by bats. I really have to say, you don't need to be freaked out by them. They're awesome. Most common in Maine are big brown bats and little brown bats, and there's a whole lot of stuff happening for bats right now. Most of you may know this. White nose fungus in the US and Canada has decimated 5 to 7 million bats, which for us is a big deal. Think about how many mosquitoes these bats eat. So if we were eating as many mosquitoes, so they eat like 3,000 mosquitoes a night, that's like the equivalent of us eating 300 hamburgers. They eat a huge amount of mosquitoes. And then I'm going to finish up a little bit just to say, like, why do we care about dark skies for animals? So there are multiple reasons, but one of them is those nocturnal animals like the owls and the bats and the moths, they all have incredible parts to their ecosystem, incredible jobs. We don't understand how interconnected ecosystems are as humans. It's hard for us to even comprehend. But owls being the apex predators of rodents, and bats being predators of moths that end up sometimes decimating crops, it really is an important thing for us to keep turning off our lights. And then last, I just wanted to mention, how am I doing? Okay, my time is good. I just wanted to mention, if you are really interested in animals and you want to learn more about animals, I highly recommend a few things. So I recommend putting iNaturalist on your phone. Might as well use our phones for some great things and some nature things. iNaturalist is a great way to identify things, but it also adds to our human knowledge. Also, there's great citizen science projects. One of my favorites is Firefly Watch. This little guy in the top left is a firefly. Fireflies also are going down in numbers. We're pretty sure that a big piece of that is light pollution. So some of you who remember like fields of fireflies when you're little, you now are not seeing that. And the reason really is manyfold, but one of those pieces is the amount of light pollution. They cannot breed and mate in areas with high light levels. And then there's a couple other things I just recommend. Podcast, if you're a podcast person, Ologies is really wonderful if you want to learn more animal facts. And then I also use eBird. So I looked up on eBird, Katahdin Woods and Waters, because I wanted to actually get a sense of owl species. And indeed, the barred owl is still the most common owl there. I was a little curious whether it might be the great horned, but it is the barred owl. So, so thank you guys so much. I am so thrilled to have been here. And if anyone wanted to know more, you are welcome to also check out Maine Master Naturalist, which is a great resource. You should become a Master Naturalist. That way you can actually share about nature yourself. So thank you.
That was another wonderful program. Thank you so much, Serena. And just for the audience, we will be sharing those links and resources in the follow-up email. So if you didn't jot them down, that's okay. That email will be going out in about a week or so. So next, we have a presentation from Katahdin Woods and Waters Ranger Jason Gablaski. Ranger Jason is passionate about astronomy and sharing his knowledge of the night sky with the public. And he will show us how we can all participate in tracking light pollution as community scientists. Jason, go for it.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight, and I'd like to talk a little bit about a citizen science project that you can get involved in, because I know a lot of you are very interested about the night skies. That's why you're here. But there's things you can do to help us with getting more and gaining more knowledge. And one of those, I will show you right now when I share my screen. Okay. Is Globe at Night. So Globe at Night is a citizen science project that spans the entire globe. It's something that you can use on your computer. It's also something you can take recordings on your cell phone. But before we get into that, I want to talk about how Katahdin Woods and Waters, we became an international dark sky sanctuary last year. So that's through the International Dark Sky Association. They're based out of Tucson, Arizona, and they designate these different sites across the world, not just here in the United States. So like some people were talking about earlier, it takes a lot of effort to get designated. But much more than that, it's not just getting designated, it's also you have to upkeep the designation. So we have to do a lot of science to see how our night skies are doing. We're taking recordings throughout the year, every year, and we're going to use that data to see, are our skies getting darker? Are they getting lighter from light pollution and things like that? So this is a picture of a car. Basically, it's a picture of me driving around at night, taking all these recordings throughout the National Monument. And it's an all-night endeavor if anybody has done this before. But if you want more information on dark sky places, things like that, I'd recommend going to the International Dark Sky Association website at www.darksky.org. They have a plethora of information on these subjects. Now, Globe at Night, they have a website, www.globeatnight.org, very simple. And there they have tons of information about learning about different constellations out there, how to observe, how to report them, and showing the data they've collected, everybody's taken information on. And we'll go on a step-by-step on that here on this website. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is how Globe at Night is a program that's sponsored by the National Science Foundation. And NORLab and Aurora, these are all basically organizations, government entities that are kind of a big deal, showing that this is a huge accredited science project that citizens can get involved in. Now, Globe at Night, they have a learning page where they show you about different constellations out there. I like to put the little credit here that the constellations that they talk about are ones that are designated officially by the International Astronomical Union. So that organization is an international based organization. They're the ones that, I'll just say it, they're the ones that demoted Pluto. But they talk a lot about the different constellations out there. A lot of them are based off Greek mythology, but don't forget, of the official constellations, a lot of them have multiple names from multiple cultures, and you can look more into that as well. And it's very fascinating stories. And that's where the real start of astronomy actually began, was through constellations. Now, with regards to Globe at Night and citizen science, they have different dates throughout each month and different constellations to look at. So the next citizen science project that they have is going to be actually on October 27th till November 5th, and that's going to be Perseus that they're going to be looking at. And you're going to have to find to help for finding the quality of the night skies. They usually choose a different constellation, and based off all the data, they can see how the skies are doing in your area with the data you collect. So here's another example on their website. You can see they can help you find and direct you to where that constellation is. So Perseus is going to be in the east up here in Maine. And the things to note about this as well is when you're out there looking at the night skies, give your eyes time to adjust out there. I highly recommend waiting about 20 minutes, 20, 30 minutes for your eyes to truly adjust. And that means not necessarily looking at your cell phone unless it has a tinted lens, not looking at anything with light. And I'll give your eyes time to adjust to see the best quality night skies in your area, or if you're up at Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument to see the Milky Way. Now, the first step in this collecting of data is you just got to put in the observations of date and time. And then you got to put in the coordinates of where you're from. And they have a nice nifty map on there that shows you exactly where to find it. So as an example, on the picture I chose, that is the Katahdin overlook on the Loop Road. That's the exact coordinates right there. And then that's a classic picture of Saturn right there that you could see with one of our telescopes once we get back to not being virtual. Now, with quality of night skies, the step 3, they have different magnitudes on how well the quality is. So as an example, The picture on the left is like a magnitude 3, and the picture on the right is like a magnitude 7. That's like the best quality night sky. Versus the 3 is like halfway there, and then 0, you probably just see Jupiter and a few stars. And that really gives you a good sense of the light pollution in your area, or the light pollution that you might be seeing or not seeing at the National Monument. Now, the big thing I always do, especially when I'm doing some measurements with our dark sky meter out in the night sky, and you can be doing as well with the Citizen Science Project, is trying to time it the best time with not having the moon as an effect, not having the sun as an effect, and hopefully having clear night skies as well. And you can document all this with the conditions out there. So what I usually highly recommend is trying to get out there when the moon is set. It doesn't have to be a new moon, because you can record throughout the month. But if the moon is set, you're not really getting that moon reflective sunlight from the moon. And then I always recommend at least 90 minutes after the sun sets, or 90 minutes before the sun rises. So you get those optimal night sky quality recordings. Now you'll see step 5 is talking about a sky quality meter. That's a professional meter that we use here at the National Monument. They cost around $100, so they're pretty pricey. But there's other ways we can do this for getting those recordings. There's actually different apps that we'll go into in a little bit. Now, then finally, once you're ready to send that data on their website, you just click Submit Data. And then this is just showing a map of last year, some of the recordings that Globe at Night got from across the country. They actually got recordings from around the world. Pretty much every continent around the world has gotten a recording, which is really incredible. And you can see just by the magnitude where the darkest sections were for recordings and where the lightest were. And then here in Maine, this is why it's important for us. So in 2020, we got one recording through this program, through the Citizen Science program within the National Monument. And we got a bunch down towards 100-mile wilderness of Appalachian Mountain Club lands and Nature Conservancy lands. 2021, right now, I don't know if they have any recordings that have been updated on their website, but it's showing nothing right now. And this is beyond the recordings I personally did for the National Monument. So when you're out there at night, maybe besides looking at the amazing night skies, the amazing breathtaking Milky Way, maybe just doing a quick taking a recording and downloading it onto either an app or just writing it down to put in the website. It is very, very useful information, not only for us, but useful information for science as a whole. It's a pretty unique project. Now, the apps I was talking about, there's Lost at Night app, and that is a great app for both iPhones and Androids. And that is a completely free app to download. I highly recommend it. You look for the owl. Remember, we're talking about night sky, nocturnal animals, and the owl is a great example of that. So Lost at Night is a great program. And when you're on your phone, you might be wondering, hey, you just told me not to look at my phone while doing these recordings. They have a special ability on that app to dim your screen so it doesn't affect your vision. And then another app is Dark Sky Meter app for iPhones. I believe there is a fee for that one. So if you don't want to pay anything, then the Lost at Night app would be the best one for you. But both are great apps. And the thing about them is they are partnered with Globe at Night. So all that information that you download on your phone will go directly to Globe at Night for their recordings as well. It's a great, easier way to do it for taking recordings in the park or at home. I recommend doing it, testing it out at home or wherever you are. And then I also highly, if you're going into the National Monument, doing these recordings and learning about it, getting involved in science, it's kind of a unique, cool thing to be able to do. Now I'm gonna get out of sharing and get back into here. And I was going to show you, so for dark sky quality meter, I was telling you about the ones that cost $100. It's just this little box right here. And they're kind of cool to have. If you wanted to get to a professional level, you could get one of these. But I think even the cell phones are at a professional level at this point with technology. And then at the very last, we also have some other things to get involved into learning about night skies. And that is our Junior Night Explorer, Junior Ranger books. So this is a national based one, has tons of information in it. And this Night Explorer book is also online, and I will submit a link for people to be able to get it. And then if you complete it and you get to learn about it, and it says ages 5 to 12, it's for everyone. I will tell you right now, this last one is a hard one, even for adults. And if you get that done, you'll earn this really cool patch. Remember, we were talking about Ursa Major going to Polaris? It's on this patch. It's pretty cool. And then I'd like to also just very quickly, we are, like I was saying, a dark sky sanctuary. That's the highest quality we can get through IDA, International Dark Sky Association. But the National Park Service in general, we're very, very enthusiastic, and we find night skies extremely important. So much so, we have a whole entire division in the National Park Service dedicated to both natural sounds and night skies. And they're based out of Denver, and they work throughout the entire country at all national parks for ensuring that we try to get the highest quality of night skies in our parks, including here at Katahdin Woods and Waters. And then the other thing is, when we were designated a national monument, specifically President Obama put into our proclamation included night skies, saying that was one of the resources that we have to protect. So I think that's a pretty special thing about up here in the North Maine woods. And that's what I got for you guys. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask after.
All right, thank you so much, Jason. That was fantastic, as the other two were, and I'm going to have a lot of fun putting together the packets to send out in the follow-up email, and maybe I'll go for my Junior Ranger patch too. And I'm very excited now to introduce Friends' own and newest staff member, Elise Kollerood. Elise has been engaging young folks in the monument all fall with our Katahdin Learning Project. And tonight she's going to teach us how to tell time using just the moon. Elise, you can take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Elise, and I'm the Program Associate for Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters. Give me a second here while I share my screen. One more time. There we go. Great. Can you all see that? Awesome. All right. I'm very excited to talk to you all about the moon tonight, because it is such an accessible and fun way to explore the night sky. Tonight, I'm going to teach you how to estimate time using the moon and its phases. We are going to cover the following topics: phases, position in the sky, and seasonality. Before we get to the moon, let's quickly chat about the sun. Without even realizing it, many of you are familiar with using the sun to tell time. You may look up in the sky and notice that the sun is getting close to the horizon line, and you may think to yourself, it must be about 5 p.m. You then look at the clock, and sure enough, you're within a half hour of getting the right time. Even in winter and summer, when the sunrise and set times vary so much, we are still able to tell time because we are so familiar with the sun. Subconsciously, you are using the sun's position in relation to the horizon line to determine time. We are going to use the same concept when telling time with the moon. You may say to yourself right now, but wait, whoops. There we go. How do we know when the moon rises and sets? It seems kind of random. Sometimes we see the moon during the day, and sometimes we see it at night. Well, you're right. The moon rise and set times do vary every day. However, this change is fairly predictable, and that is what I'm going to teach you next. To understand time using the moon, it is crucial to be familiar with the moon's position and phases. So let's briefly go over that. To orient yourself to this graphic, we are looking down at the North Pole, and you can see how the sun is lighting up half of the Earth and half of the moon. Day occurs on the sunny side of Earth, and night occurs on the dark. For this presentation, I want you to imagine yourself as standing on the red X whenever you see it. Moon phases are created by the relative position between the Earth, the Sun, and the Moon. As we know, the Moon doesn't actually produce light, but is reflecting sunlight that is shining on it. Based on its position as it revolves around the Earth, we can see all, part, or none of the illuminated side of the Moon. The Moon takes 29 and a half days to complete its full cycle, and just like the Sun, the Moon rises in the east and sets in the west. For now, let's assume that the Moon is up for 12 hours a day, but keep in mind that this does change seasonally, which I will explain at the end. Let's take a look at the full moon. Full moons occur when the Earth is between the Sun and the Moon. We are in a position where we can see the entirety of the illuminated moon. Taking a look at this diagram, imagine you are at point X. This is the first time you will be able to see the full moon. Before this point, we couldn't see the moon because essentially the Earth is blocking our view. So, as the sun sets, the full moon rises. The Earth rotates, and 6 hours later at midnight, the full moon is highest in the sky. Then, 6 hours later at dawn, the full moon sets. This explains why the full moon is only visible at night. Let's take a look at the new moon phase. New moons occur when the moon is between the sun and the Earth, like in this example. The part of the moon that is illuminated is facing away from us, so we can't see the new moon. However, it is still there. I want you to think of the new and the full moon kind of as opposites. Instead of setting at dawn like the full moon, the new moon rises at dawn. The new moon is highest in the sky at noon and sets when the sun sets. Taking a look at the first quarter moon, the first quarter moon appears to us like it is half full, and that's because we can see only half of the illuminated moon. In other words, this moon is halfway between being new and full. If the X is the point when the first quarter moon appears to rise, what time do you think it is? The first quarter moon rises at noon. What time do you think it'll be highest in the sky? At about twilight when the sun is setting. And you're probably figuring this out by now, but it sets in the middle of the night around midnight. Lastly, this is the position of the sun, Earth, and moon during its third quarter. Again, we can only see half of the illuminated moon, but this time it is the other half of the moon that we can see. It is basically the opposite of quarter moon in terms of rise and set times. I'm going to give you a few seconds now to see if you can determine what time you think it will rise and set based on what you've learned. All right. It rises at midnight. It is highest in the sky at dawn. And then it sets in the middle of the day around noon. Like John mentioned earlier, tonight's moon is close to a waxing gibbous. Remember, waxing means that the moon is growing, whereas waning means that it's getting smaller. Gibbous means that we can see 75% of the moon. Tonight, the moon is actually only about 65% full, but for our purposes, let's say we have a waxing gibbous. So let's try to figure out what time our moon tonight will rise, is highest in the sky, and when it will set. As you can see here, our moon tonight will be highest in the sky somewhere between sunset and midnight, or at about 9 p.m. In actuality, in Katahdin Woods and Waters, the moon will be highest in the sky at 8:17 p.m., which makes sense because we aren't quite in the waxing gibbous phase yet. This means that the moon tonight rose approximately 6 hours earlier, or at about 3 p.m., and it's going to set around 3 a.m. Now you know how to figure out what time the moon will rise during each of its phases. However, to keep things easy for you, I made a helpful cheat sheet to remember the general rise and set times. Did you notice that each of these phases are about 3 hours later with each phase? I think that's pretty cool, and it really helps me remember the chart. Okay, let's get on to telling time. Using our generalization that the full moon will rise at 6 p.m., is highest in the sky at midnight, and set around 6 a.m., if we notice the full moon is about halfway up in the east, what time do you think it is? You might guess that it's around 9 p.m. So here's my quiz for you. If you notice that the full moon is rising, but not quite at its highest point, what time do you think it might be? If you guessed approximately 11 p.m., you are correct. What about if you notice the full moon is approaching the horizon line and is setting? Since we know that it sets at about 6 a.m., we might guess that it's about 5 in the morning. Once you get more familiar with the full moon's position in the sky, you can start to get more and more precise when predicting the time. I highly recommend getting comfortable with the full moon before you practice using any other phase. However, if you really enjoy brain teasers, you can use every phase to determine the time. For example, here are the times for the first quarter moon as it moves across the sky. Now, remember how I gave you a chart earlier that made rise and set times really easy? Well, it's not actually that simple. Like I mentioned earlier, these times will vary with the season, just like how the rise and the set times of the sun change. This is a chart that demonstrates some of the differences in times if you are watching the moon in Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument. Let's take a look at the winter chart. You will notice that the new and the full moon rise and set times align very well with the sun set and rise times. The new moon will rise with the sun at about 7 a.m. and set with the sun at about 4 p.m. The full moon will rise earlier than normal at 4 p.m. and set at 7 a.m. I find this very interesting because it means in the winter time, the full moon will be up for a long time. The opposite is true in the summer. However, the closer you live to the equator, you'll have less drastic changes. Although the seasons make telling time a little more confusing, the more time you spend looking at the moon, the more you will develop your lunar awareness skills. All right, my friends, I hope you learned something about the moon this evening and are excited to try this out on your own. The next full moon is October 20th, so get out there and try it out. Thank you all for being here. Back to Sarah.
Thanks, Elise. And you weren't kidding. That is like a brain teaser. I'm definitely going to be using the cheat sheets when I try to tell time with the moon. And our final speaker for tonight is Nancy Hathaway. Nancy is the president of Dark Sky Maine, our partner tonight, a dark sky advocate and one of the original founders of Stars Over Katahdin, and many more things. Nancy is here to tell us about Dark Sky Maine's mission and how we can all make a difference for dark skies. We are so pleased to have this opportunity to share the stage tonight with Dark Sky Maine and honor all the folks who've been working for years to make nights like tonight possible. And a reminder, we'll take 20 minutes following Nancy's presentation to pose some of your questions to the panelists. So don't forget to stay tuned and put those questions in the Q&A. And now I will hand it over to Nancy.
Thank you, Sarah. It's exciting to be here, thinking of the history of what we're doing tonight, a vision that came true with so many people taking part. The first Stars Over Katahdin, I guess, was 8 years ago. And I want to mention Susan Adams, who was a really big part in promoting Stars Over Katahdin when it first started. Dark Sky Maine, after the monument became designated as a dark sky sanctuary, it was obvious that we didn't want to stop with Katahdin Woods and Waters. And the vision became larger and larger. And so we added dark sky, we added Maine to dark sky. So the vision and the mission is an appreciation of the night sky for all of Maine, and to educate as many people as possible about the night sky. And the Dark Sky Maine wants to support providing light that's secure, that light that also has in mind the health of humans and wildlife, and maintaining our dark sky heritage, which we saw on the map earlier, has the largest area of dark sky east of the Mississippi River in the North Maine woods. So Dark Sky Maine wants to help basically anyone, citizens, land trusts, the state, to preserve our night sky. And by doing it through, especially with effective lighting. So lighting is really important. And I have some facts here I want to share on light pollution and its effects on wildlife, ecosystems, and humans. So the rhythms of night and day are the biological makeup of all of life, and it's encoded in our DNA in all plants and animals. And for over 100 years, the skies were very dark, but today, because even the deep forests have been invaded with light pollution. Light pollution affects every living thing on Earth. We waste so much energy with lights. And a 100 watt, this is interesting, 100 watt bulb, if it were on for every night of the year, equals 1/2 ton of burning coal. Street lights produce most of the light pollution. Bird migration, the birds can wander off during their migration because of light pollution. Newly hatched sea turtles on beaches need to go to the shimmering light of the ocean. But if there's a light, like at the end of the beach, a hotel, a resort, or any kind of light, the baby turtles go towards that light instead. Bright car lights cause accidents, and many of us have seen the lights getting brighter. Artificial light disrupts sleep cycles, can cause depression, obesity. Breast and prostate cancer have been researched by the American Medical Association with bright lights, the connection. And as Serena said earlier about insects and how they're drawn to light, and it's a fatal attraction. So what do we do? What can we do as citizens? Jason gave us a couple of ideas, and there's a lot we can do. We can use fully shielded lights so that the shields cover over the light bulb so that the light doesn't go up into the night sky, and it just shields the area that we actually need light on to be. And we can turn lights off, which is actually a huge, very simple thing that we can do. And so many people, when I mention dark skies, will say, oh, that light across the pond, it's left on all winter when people go away. Or the people up around Millinocket are saying, gee, new people are moving in and they're just leaving these lights on. So that's where education is a huge part, because so many don't know about light pollution. Using warm lights. So a lot of LEDs are used these days, and LEDs are measured in kelvins, and the 2700 kelvins is like the best number of kelvins. When you go higher up to like 5000, it produces a lot of blue light, which is a real problem with light pollution. Look for products that have dimming capabilities. And utility companies, for example, when new lights, which have been happening all around Maine, it would be wonderful if the lights could be dimmed during the night when they're not used as much during the middle of the night. And we want them to be fully shielded and also 3000 kelvins or less. Consider the longevity of an entire fixture. Use lighting where and when it's needed. Curtains to contain the light on the inside. And I was horrified last night as I came home with a bright light on inside my house and seeing how much light was produced going out my window. So we can just keep learning and learning. If safety is a concern, installing motion detected lights and timers. And also there's a great YouTube video. I don't have it here, but there's a video on someone's backyard and a thief, so-called thief, coming into the backyard, and the light is very bright. And then it shows a different scene where you can't really see him that well. And there's a different scene with a light that has a shield on it, with the light pointing down to the ground, and the thief or the person coming in through the gate, you can see much more clearly. So a brighter light doesn't necessarily mean a safer light. There are dark sky apps. You can contact land trusts. So here's Land Use Planning Commission would love to have you contact the legislature and have ask the legislature to give more staff so that the Land Use Planning Commission can actually focus on dark sky lighting because they're overrun with things they need to do. So yeah, the town officials, like contacting town officials, especially when not Emera, but Versant and CMP start putting in new lighting in the towns, to contact town officials and let them know the importance of shields, the amount of kelvins in lights and so forth, and that you're just interested. Or for those of us who have town meetings, to talk with the selectmen about numbers of lights in a town and not increasing them. Talk to friends, family, neighbors. Neighbors can be touchy. A lot of people will talk about their neighbors, but it's difficult to talk to your neighbor. And I have a neighbor next door, and I went not too far from my home, and I went outside to look at the stars, and his bright barn light was on. And I thought, oh no. So I called him up and I said, you know, I'd love to look at the stars tonight. Would you be willing to turn your light off? And he said, oh no, my light's on? Oh, I'm so sorry. And it hasn't been on since. And that was 2 or 3 years ago. So I encourage us to talk to our neighbors. Looking into a lighting ordinance in your town or city. So Dark Sky Maine is willing to help you do that. It's, I think, probably easier than we think it is. Then visit Katahdin Woods and Waters to get a sense of how many stars in the Milky Way that we can see when there's such little light. One night I was up there and there was a young student from China, and she said, oh my gosh, I've never seen the Milky Way. And so many people will say that. And I think we have in Maine, we have this great gift that many people don't realize, that what a precious gift we do have. And maybe hold a star party like we're doing tonight. And soon I hope we will be able to go out over to the overlook or at Katahdin Woods and Waters in person and look through telescopes and see what Katahdin Woods and Waters has to offer. So last I wanted to say, I went to a great talk last night by a Maine lobbyist, and she said, if you really want to lobby for something, put out the vision. Like, what do you want? Instead of like, let's not have light pollution, but what is it that we do want? So we want to be able to see the stars. We want to be able to bring telescopes and have star parties all over the state of Maine. The more, the better. And there's no reason why we can't do that. And I think we are doing it. There are programs that are set up in libraries. There are telescopes that are available. We can look at our own outdoor residential lights. Are there timers? Are our lights fully shielded? We can talk to our neighbors. Street lights. I'd love to see street lights all over the state of Maine fully shielded and 3,000 kelvins or less. The cities using dark sky lighting, such as Sherbrooke, just over the border in Quebec, 160,000 people. They're part of a dark sky reserve, which is Mount Megantic Park in Quebec. And this city of 160,000 people has agreed to have dark sky lighting, as Tucson has as well. Have our children be able to see the stars in the Milky Way. I grew up in a small town, Maine, and just in a small town, Maine, we had so many lights. I don't remember in my childhood seeing the night sky in my town. So the stars connect us with our humanity. The night sky shows us who we are. So darkskymaine.com. Please feel free to contact us about anything having to do with dark skies, and our mission is to help you. So let's save Maine's stars. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for joining us and for everything you do to support dark skies. There were so many great suggestions in your talk, and again, we'll be sharing a lot of that out in the email. I, for one, will be taking some of those actions. It is very doable in a world that seems like there's sometimes things you can't help. We can all help dark skies. And once again, thank you, Richardson's Hardware and Celestron. And of course, thanks to you for tuning in tonight, and thanks to our community of members and supporters. Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters is a member-supported organization, and we would not be here without all of you. If you'd like to be part of this community working to preserve and protect Katahdin Woods and Waters National Monument, its dark skies, and support the surrounding communities of the Katahdin region, please consider joining us as a member. It's all of us together who make this work and the community possible, so thank you. And now for your questions. We've received a lot of fantastic questions already. We may not get to them all in the time we have, but we'll be sending out the follow-up email, and we hope to answer a few more of those questions, and of course, provide the links and resources. You can also find more information about visitation and our dark sky guide on the Friends of Katahdin Woods and Waters website, friendsofkww.org, or you can reach out to us with more specific questions. We're always happy to help our members plan a trip. And on that note, our first question tonight is for Ranger Jason. The question is, what are some locations that are good for stargazing in the park? Are there areas in the park for day or night that would be accessible to those who can only walk short distances?
Absolutely. There's quite a few spots, but I know a lot of people have already listed out their, like the one we do a lot of our dark sky stars over Katahdin at, and that is definitely the overlook on the Loop Road. It has a great vantage point, all looking south and west. So in the summer months, you get a really good view of the Milky Way, like the core of the Milky Way and the galactic plane. There's a few other places to the north. We have an overlook over in the Seboyas section, or the northeast corner of the National Monument is another great overlook spot. That is, the road has been pretty much freshly graded, and it's an easier drive to get to, I'd say. And both of those points you can drive to. That's what's really nice about those two locations. Just note, if you're going to the Katahdin overlook on the Loop Road, it is 10 miles driving on Swiftbrook Road, and then a few extra miles going to the south part of the loop. But it's And be careful out there for wildlife. We were talking about wildlife earlier. There's tons of wildlife out there at night. Just as an example, last year, when we had that comet last year that went through, tons of people were at the overlook at that time because they knew that was a prime spot. But I ended up seeing a lynx out there at night, as well as a ton of moose. So be careful out there, and you might get a surprise to see some of our wildlife as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. I have another question about being outside, and I'd like to ask John this one. Do you have some tips to share, and also maybe some good locations for dark sky photography?
Dark sky photography. Well, the darker the spot, the better, because you'll get haze from light pollution and it shortens up your exposure time. So what you need to do dark sky photography, some people doing some amazing things with their cell phones these days. I'm not a cell phone photographer. I use a DSLR camera, and I do a lot of dark sky photography. The picture behind me is one of mine taken at the monument at the overlook a few years back. So get a dark spot. You need a tripod, because whether you're using your cell phone or a bigger, more, heavy duty camera, you need to hold it still for a long time. You need long exposures, like 20 seconds or 30 seconds without any motion at all, because that'll blur your images. And just experiment and have fun. Have fun with whether you're shooting with your cell phone or whatever camera you happen to have. Just need to be able to take long exposures and get in a nice dark spot. And the key is to enjoy being there. I've gone out and spent the whole night out. We arrived one place at 2 o'clock in the morning, shot till dawn. I got home and all my pictures were out of focus. I didn't pay close enough attention to my focus. You have to find a bright star to get your focusing on. But you know what? I had a great night because I was out there with a couple of friends, and the Milky Way was overhead, and felt like we were all alone with the night sky. And we spent 3 or 4 hours out there, and it was an incredible evening. And it would have been better if the pictures had come out. And I do have a lot of good pictures too, but sometimes even when you have a failure with the photography, you still had a good time. And part of just, it gets you out there experiencing those things. So that's what I recommend. Katahdin Woods and Waters is a great place. I shoot from all over the place. I live here in Waterville, and I just go 20 miles out of town and shoot in rural areas of like Albion and Skowhegan and places like that. It's way better if you can go to Katahdin Woods and Waters, but for me, that's a 3-hour drive. So I don't go there on a whim. I have to plan that one out. I don't know if that answers your question now, but there's a few thoughts anyway.
Thanks, John. We have a lot of members who share their beautiful dark sky photography when they return home from their trips, and it's always so special to get those. I have a question. I'm going to point it at Elise, but Elise, if I've put you on the spot and you don't know the answer, you can shoot it over to somebody else. How often is the Aurora Borealis visible in the Katahdin region?
Oh, that is such a good question, because I actually just got an update that it was visible. I think it was like 2 days ago, and I missed it, and I'm so upset about that. I don't know the exact time. It does come on basically waves where there's like it's in like a cycle where there's times when it's going to be stronger, and then it kind of dips, and these are over several years. But is anyone, maybe Jason or John, want to answer this question in more detail?
It goes in the cycle is the Sunspot Cycle, which is 11 years long. And we are approaching maximum. When there are more sunspots, auroras are caused by activity on the sun, interacting with the upper atmosphere around the polar regions. So the magnetic field leads them into the polar regions of the Earth. They can happen any time of the year. It's not, people associate them with winter. You might see them more in the winter only because we're out after dark more in the winter. And the winter sky tends to be lower humidity and crisper and clearer. So you see it. In the summer, it doesn't get dark till 9:30 or 10 o'clock or 11 before it's really dark enough to see something like the aurora. And even the high humidity you might have in the summer might wash them from our view. They're kind of hard to predict, but there are websites you can go to which basically monitor solar activity. When there's a solar flare or coronal mass ejection of materials, then we know that a few hours later, there's likely to be aurora. We did apparently have one the other night, though it was overcast where I was, so I clearly didn't see it either. But I've seen some incredible ones from the area up there. They are just beautiful to watch. Jason, do you have anything that you want to add into?
I will add that if you've never seen the Aurora Borealis, it should be something on your bucket list. It will change your life. It seriously will change your life.
Wow.
I was going to add, just you can get alerts on your phone. So there's apps. There's an app for that. So check it out. It's so wonderful. It just will tell you, oh, your region may have northern lights. So yeah.
Obviously, there's an app for that. I don't necessarily always think of that first. So I'm going to put all our panelists on the spot and someone jump in. Who or what inspired your interest in dark skies or astronomy? Somebody jump in and tell us.
I'll jump in. I was inspired by the National Park Service. When I was a kid, we took a trip out west and we're in Badlands. At that point, it was Badlands National Monument. And we were camping and the rangers led a thing with a few small telescopes. And so, I was a kid who always grew up with the Apollo program, watching astronauts. I liked space, and I went over and the ranger showed me Saturn for the first time. And I just fell in love with the stars and decided I wanted to learn more about that. And that's kind of where it all began with me, was with the National Park Service. And I hold the Park Service very dear to my heart. And the sky is probably one of the few things out there that might surpass the National Park Service. But that's my story.
Well, I can share mine quickly, John, because it is the same. I never knew that, but I was so excited when you said that one of my first jobs was there in the Badlands. And I had a very similar experience, although it didn't really pull me into it quite as much as you and Nancy and Susan Adams and NPS here with Jason now have done lately. So I'm getting more and more excited as I learn.
So I'd say for myself, I can remember the first time I saw the Milky Way. Because I grew up in Massachusetts, so we have tons of light pollution, and it's something you don't realize until you get to a dark place. And the first place I ever saw the Milky Way, I went to Unity College, by the way, for people that are from Maine, and we went on a trip to Acadia National Park. And that was the first time I ever saw it reflecting off the Atlantic Ocean, going right across to the horizon, and it is ingrained in my mind. What's enhanced it more is I kind of lucked out and ended up being the lead astronomy ranger out at Death Valley for one winter. Also blew my mind, super fun, and met a lot of scientists that work at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They gave me a private tour out there, a lot of people from NASA, and it just gets you so excited for how passionate they are, and that passion just comes on you, it's addictive. And then just a little side note on there, because I know some people were talking about NASA earlier, that Artemis 1, if anybody's familiar with the Artemis program, is starting up hopefully January this year with Artemis 1 being launched. If people aren't familiar with what that is, we're going back to the moon. And we're going to be sending the first woman to the moon in 2026. And it's going to be something to keep an eye out for, because that's going to be special. It's been over 50 years.
Oh, that's awesome, Jason. And as a mother of a daughter, it means that maybe more girls will be inspired as well. Nancy, did you want to share where you get all your passion from?
Well, I was really contemplating and thinking about it. And I think what I remember is when I moved back to Maine in the early 2000s, stepping out of the car and looking up at the sky, and that oh my God, wow, just that wow, wow, wow. And yeah, it was a feeling. And, I think that part of it for me is making friends with that wow. it was a little overwhelming when I first looked up. And so I was drawn to it, making friends with this, like, oh my gosh, like the growing up as a child. I remember, so growing up as a child, I remember the Catholic nuns talking about no beginning and no end. And it was like, what? And then looking up at the stars in the Milky Way, it was that same, like, whoa, this is not thinking. It's the awe and the wonder and the actually embodiment of being part of this amazing, unspeakable essence that we're all part of. So I guess that's what it is. I mean, you could look also at a flower and have the same experience, like a botanist looking at a tiny little, purple flower. But for me, that looking up at the night sky really connects me, or it doesn't even connect me. It's like we're part of it. We're part of this amazing mystery. So thanks for asking.
That's beautiful. Serena, I don't want to leave you out. Do you want to share a few words?
I will real quick. My dad used to pull us out of bed anytime there was anything happening in the sky, and we'd be like, Dad, I'm so tired, it's 2 a.m. But he'd be like, nope, I'm bringing you out in a sleeping bag in the middle of February. And I'm so grateful for that. He was also, there would be a bird and he'd just pull off the road so we could all see it. And I'm very grateful for that, because that's where that comes from for me.
Serena, I think our dads have met. And before we are totally out of time, I just want to check with our panelists and see if anybody has any parting words you'd like to leave us on tonight. And if not, we'll say good night, but I just wanted to offer that. Jason.
One last thing. There is a solar eclipse coming that's going to go across the National Monument in 2024. It's I think in April of 2024. I'll put a link in. I'll have a link for you to send you, but definitely mark your calendars. It's going to go up from Texas, going up and cross Baxter State Park and the National Monument as well. So hopefully, fingers crossed for great weather, knock on wood on that as well. And hopefully we'll be able to see that in April in 2024.
And I will like to.
I have one last. Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to close my time here with saying that if you have a vision, go for it. And also the power that each of us has is huge. So if you love the dark sky, my request is that you do something to help it in some way, to help preserve Maine's stars.
And I was just going to point out there is a lunar eclipse next month on November 19th. That morning, not the night, not the evening, but the morning. It's an early morning thing. It starts around 2:15 to 2:30, peaks around a little after 4 a.m. and ends around 5:20. And that's when the moon turns an orangish red. It's going to be not total, but pretty like 97% total. So we hopefully will get some nice color if it's clear that night. So you got to get up early and go see it. If you're only going to get up for just like 15 to 20 minutes, get up around 4:15 or so. That's at the peak, or actually it's around 4:30. Anywhere in there, and you might see a really pretty thing. Unlike the solar eclipse, it requires no eye protection. It's totally safe to look at. Check it out. It'll get you all excited about the solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024. I'll be up there with Jason and I and a handful of other people will help you safely view the solar eclipse. We know it's going to be clear, right, Jason?
Thanks, everyone. And John, I suspect there will be more than a handful of people for the solar eclipse. So we are at our time. But again, many, many thanks to all of you for being here tonight. Thank you so much to all of our presenters, partners, and sponsors. Thank you to our members and supporters. I hope you'll all stay connected with friends and feel free to reach out to us. Our website is right here. Reach out to any of us on the staff at any time. Keep that eye out for the follow-up email in a week or so, and we hope to see many of you in the Katahdin region for Stars Over Katahdin 2022. Happy stargazing and good night.